Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of How to Street Garage. Today we're going to be talking about AC systems. As you can tell, I've got the windows down. Alright. And that's only because my AC don't work at the moment. I'm going to get it charged. Because I had to swap out the compressor. I had the system emptied yesterday, and now I'm on my way back there to have the system refilled. And I'll be back to talk about AC systems because it's summertime and there's some people out there that want to stay cool. So be right back at you. So today we are talking about AC systems, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about AC systems and understanding AC. I've had a lot of people send me questions and ask me, how AC systems work and which parts do they need, why isn't it blowing cold. So today I'm going to go over each part of the AC system and how they kind of work. Now, I will go ahead and say that I am not 100% an expert. So anybody out there that has more air conditioning experience than me might need to correct me. This is mostly just general knowledge. And so here we go. I will throw up images on the screen so that if you need to order new parts, you know exactly what you're looking for and what it's called as we're going through the video here. Now, the first thing that everybody knows about is usually the AC compressor. Everybody's aware of what this part is. Everybody's aware of what this part is and generally what the part does. Now here on my car we have the AC compressor down here, which I've just recently replaced. To explain how the AC compressor works, it's kind of simple, kind of complicated. All right, so the AC compressor has a couple components on it that are important. The AC compressor clicks on through electromagnetism on the clutch, and then it also has a pressure relief valve if the pressure gets too high so the system doesn't explode. It usually blows out of the pressure relief valve right there on the compressor. Now generally most cars are the same for the systems, but they obviously vary from car to car. The compressor has two lines, in and out. What it basically has is it has a little piston and rod on the inside, and it starts to push the fluid or freon through the system. That's why the compressor is so important. And this is known as the low pressure side. Here is the input valve here that I have for the low pressure side. So this is normally where you would put freon in. So it goes through this low pressure line and it goes up to the firewall. What is behind the firewall is the next important step in which actually makes your air conditioning cool. Behind the firewall is a piece that I really can't show you. I will show an image on the screen. Behind the firewall, the hose bolts to what's called the evaporator. Now what the evaporator is a big metal box with a bunch of tubes going through it and fins, and that is what actually gets cold. Underneath the dash, you have the fan or the blower that blows past the evaporator. The evaporator gets really, really, really cold. The fan pushes the wind past the evaporator, cooling the air, and then it comes out the vents cold. The way that the evaporator gets so cold is a expansion valve. What is an expansion valve and what does it do? Well, I'll put an image on the screen. Now what this expansion valve does is it squeezes the fluid down so that it actually passes through it, turns it from a liquid to a gas. This is actually one of the main components for AC systems that actually gets overlooked. This is the sole piece that actually makes your AC cold. To explain what an expansion valve does, if you blow on your hand like this, it feels hot. But if you blow on your hand like this, it feels cool because you're squeezing down the air, and as it passes through the squeeze of the tiny little space, it cools it down. This is how the expansion valve actually turns the freon into a gas, making the evaporator itself cold. So you really can't see much here because it's kind of, there's two lines right here. So here you can see this little red H, which means high pressure. So the high pressure side then comes out of here, comes through this. It actually goes down in front of the car, and you think it would go to the condenser, but it does not first. It goes over to the very important dryer. Now the dryer at this point will remove any moisture within fluid. That's why we're gonna go over here in a minute about vacuum and filling the system itself. But the dryer, what it does is that it holds and removes any water that may be in the system. Now the evaporator actually starts to sweat, just like a cold glass of water. And if you ever know, when you run air conditioning on a car, there's like a puddle of water underneath the ground. And what that is, that's the evaporator runoff. You know, there's a little tray at the bottom of the evaporator with a hose attached to it, which you notice goes out of the firewall down to the ground. And all that is just water, runoff from it getting so cold, and the heat around it causes it to condensate. Also, that's another thing that you need to make sure is clean and clear and it's dripping water. If it's not dripping water, then the AC system is not doing what it needs to do. Now, the dryer removes any water that may have been put into the system. Water is what is the biggest enemy of AC systems. It can destroy them. And that's why a lot of people have, exploding compressors, or maybe compressors die very quickly after replacing them, is because they don't remove all the water and air within the system. Once the dryer dries the fluid, it then comes out of the dryer into the condenser here. And most condensers on Civics are like over on this side, but on Integras and Accords and things like that, they're out here in the front. And this is where the fluid starts to go through and it gets cooled down. That's why the fan, here's a fan here, hidden underneath here. The compressor fan blows through and keeps wind blowing through the condenser. That cools the fluid down, and then it comes out of the condenser. You can see here, it comes out of the condenser, and then it runs back into the compressor. The more cold wind blowing through, the more cold air within inside the cabin will help the air conditioning get cooler and cooler. Generally speaking, it's hard for the interior cabin to be more than, 14 to 20 degrees cooler on the inside than the outside temperatures of the car. Now, if you get to drive a long time, you've got some tinted windows, that'll obviously help it. But just in general, if your car sits in the sun and you go to get in it and it's hot as hell, it's definitely gonna take longer for the AC system to cool down, because there's so many other factors heating everything up. The car was originally an R12 Freon car, so it's obviously already been converted to R134, and it really just takes these caps here, this little adapter here on the, and I've also replaced all the seals with neoprene seals. So if you have, a leak, it could be one of the seals. The other thing about AC compressors is that because it spins, it slowly releases the Freon over time. Not by much, but because it spins, it can't keep the Freon in it completely over time. So over the course of 2 or 3 years, even a brand new car will be a little low on Freon. Keep that in mind. However, now let's talk about charging the system. Charging the system properly is super important. Now, when it comes to charging the system, using one of these cans, self-charging systems, can work for you, and they are sometimes a good idea, but that's mostly if the system has had a vacuum on it, and if it's just run out of Freon, then it's probably good to just charge it up with one of these. However, if your AC system has been open to the air for a long period of time, or there's been the lines disconnected or the compressor missing for a long period of time, you definitely need to have the system vacuumed before you have it charged. Now, most of the times you can go to a shop and they will hook it up to a vacuum and charge the system all together all in once. I definitely suggest putting, your new parts on, your new compressor, expansion valve, dryer, and then going to a shop and having it vacuumed and charged. If you do not have enough Freon in, of course, it won't be cold enough. If you have too much in there, it won't be cold enough. It's got to have the proper measurements with oil as well. Now, some other tips. Most people don't know. The dryer should always be replaced every time that you replace the compressor, because once the dryer is open and used, they need to be replaced. And they're quite cheap. They're usually roughly anywhere from $10 to $20. So once they have all your AC components on the car, you come down to a shop and have it vacuumed and recharged with a professional machine. That's the right way to do it. So here it's vacuuming it down. The gauges are at 0, and when it stops vacuuming, the gauges should stay at 0. And if the gauges stay at 0, it means we got no leaks. And now we're filling the system. Oh, it feels so nice having AC in this thing. Oh, there's nothing better than having ice cold AC. Anyway, so what I'm doing now is I brought the car out on the highway. Anyway, I didn't want to go beat up the car around town because all that excess heat. I mean, maybe I'm kind of weird, but what I like to do is, you know, kind of ease the AC system in, you know, kind of break it in a little bit, I guess, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't really mean anything, but for me it's peace of mind where, you know, once I get the AC charged, I'll kind of drive the car very carefully because I don't want to blow a seal because of the pressures and things like that. So far, everything seems to be fine. I replaced the radiator yesterday and the compressor. The car's temperature is sitting perfect. Now, another reason why your system may not be blowing cold is because the expansion valve may be stuck open or broken. And sometimes they can become stuck open if there's water in the system, and it may freeze the expansion valve in its place. So sometimes vacuuming the system can correct that. Other times the expansion valve might be destroyed in the process. The expansion valve is not an expensive part to replace, but it is kind of a pain in the ass to replace because you have to remove the evaporator from underneath the dash. So in short, if you want to have, you know, a good AC system that's working, if you know that your compressor is bad, replace it. Also replace the dryer and use new seals. Usually a packet of seals can cost anywhere from like $5 to $8 at an auto parts store. The other advantage of going to a place where they vacuum the system and charge the system is that they'll find any leaks that may be happening with the system. So obviously you don't want to deal with any leaks. And it might seem like there's a whole lot of O-rings to replace, but there really isn't. Anywhere that you see, you know, lines bolted on or lines wrenched together, you know, that's a place to replace an O-ring seal. Another issue may be always check your fuses and always check your relays when it comes to the compressor and the compressor fan. Another thing that most people don't realize is that the compressor and the fan usually won't kick on until the system is charged and has enough Freon in it. So if you replace the system entirely and you want to check to see if it's working and there's no Freon in the system, the compressor is not going to kick on because there's no Freon in the system. Another reason why making sure that your AC system gets hooked up to gauges is because the pressures that the gauges read will tell the mechanic and whoever's doing your AC, it will tell them what's going on with the AC system. There is such a thing as weak compressors, you know, where they don't really keep things cool at a low RPM but do well while driving down the road. Sometimes there's clogs in the system, you know, if it's open to debris and bugs for a long period of time. Sometimes that can happen, I've seen it. Just keep that in mind. That's why going to a shop that has a machine to properly vacuum and fill the AC system is going to guarantee you, you know, best return on your investment, and it's going to be the least amount of headaches, and you can make sure that it's done properly. Another common problem could be the actual AC switch itself inside the interior. So making sure that that switch is working is important. I've seen switches get stuck, and I've seen EKs in particular have issues with the AC switch as well. But whenever you're trying to make sure that the system is working, again, always check fuses and relays, make sure the fan is working, make sure the compressor is kicking on. One of the things that I like to do sometimes, if I'm not sure about a compressor, if I don't know if the compressor works or not, I'll get one of those cans of Freon to, you know, shoot into the system, and I will see if the compressor cuts on, and then go have the system evacuated and recharged. Any Freon that they recover, they usually put back in the system so they don't charge you for it. So that's another tip for you. Another component to check for, which is usually on one of the lines, or sometimes it's on the dryer itself, sometimes it's located on the condenser, is the pressure switch. I've had pressure switches go bad, and if you ever have a compressor that keeps clicking on, clicking off, clicking on, clicking off, I would check the pressure switch before replacing the compressor. Sometimes they just blow out and won't activate the compressor to turn on. Now, the pressure switch is there to cut the compressor off if the pressure gets to a certain point. Meaning when it's nice and cool outside and you've got the compressor, you know, running, it'll actually cycle on and off, and that's because it's reaching a certain temperature inside the cabin and it's reaching a certain pressure. So the problem is that if the compressor never cycles off, it'll eventually lock up and possibly explode. Then finally, on the compressor, there should be a pressure relief valve. If those blow, then pretty much you need to replace the compressor or just the pressure relief valve itself. I've seen those blow, and that's usually from the system not being vacuumed and there's too much Freon in it, and the air gets to everything, creates too much pressure, and kaboom. Also, another thing is to make sure that your fan is working and that your condenser in the front of the car is free and clear of any leaves and debris and gunk, you know, insects and crap. I like to always take a car to the car wash and really spray it down. That usually helps make sure it gets clear. But anyway, guys, I hope I've given all the information that I can out there. Anybody that knows where I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. And I hope this video helped some people out there understand AC a little better. Hope I didn't forget anything. Anyway, guys, thanks for all the support. If you can, pick up a t-shirt. Links are in the description, as well as links to Hush Performance products. Use code HSG for 10% off. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. And I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully, it'll be tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Peace out.